Joining me now to discuss all of this on set, Kevin Frey, the Washington correspondent for Spectrum News New York 1. Former Maryland Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards. She's also an NBC News political analyst. And Zach Roday, a Republican strategist and a former advisor to Governors Brian Kemp and Glenn Youngkin. So, Kevin, let's start with these numbers. I mean, it's a weird place for Democrats to be. They love the idea of voting, but they're not necessarily thrilled about voting for their own party. How do they change this heading into the 2026?
I mean, and that seems to be what they've been struggling with. When you look at Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Cory Booker, both doing these like endless speeches on their respective floors. It seems to be the approach right now is let's try to get caught trying, but does that actually penetrate with the audience? That's the thing that the parties have, or at least the Democrats have really been struggling
with. So, Donna,
with.
how do they fix this? How do Democrats reconnect with their base, at least the elected Democrats?
Well, I think they just have to be out there. I mean, one thing is for sure, I'm hypercritical of the Democratic Party too, but when I show up to vote, I'm voting for a Democrat. So I'm not worried about that. I mean, I do worry that we make sure we make the investments on the ground, that Democrats are making the kind of investments on the ground that are going to turn out voters, that they're talking more to young people. I think that's really important. It's where Democrats missed the mark, I think, in 2024. And so, you know, it really is important to show up. And up until very recently, I think voters have perceived that Democrats haven't shown up.
And do they have to be more than just the party that's not Donald Trump?
Well, of course they do. I mean, obviously, you know, pointing to a couple of things in that big, bad, ugly bill that, you know, is going to hurt the American people, hurt health care and, you know, child nutrition and those sort of things, really important. But Democrats also, I think, have to speak to what they would do, because it's not enough just to say no. That's going to get us so far, get Democrats so far, but to get over the hurdle, they've got to say what they're for.
So, Zach, a 22-point enthusiasm gap, it's got to be making your friends at the NRSC and the NRCC a little nervous. We should point out that, you know, it's always difficult for a president in his first midterm to try and keep the enthusiasm up. How do Republicans counter this right now?
Well, important to know the generic ballot is still pretty close, though, and it's not where it was in the midterms in 2018 when President Trump was last in office, and even 2006 when President Bush was in office. It was a 7-point gap then. So the enthusiasm, you want to see that in a midterm, of course, but the generic ballot is really important because, to the Congresswoman's point, they are going to come home, just like Republicans are going to come home, right? So the enthusiasm is going to be about even, I would suspect, when we turn into the new year and the midterm cycle. One of the ways Republicans can do it is, well, they got entrusted with, of course, Congress and the White House, and then they delivered with one big, beautiful bill. When you get power, you have to deliver. And so that was why it was such a huge moment, not just for like the many wins in it, securing the border, funding the military, lowering taxes, strengthening our energy dominance across the globe. That's huge, but it also is the promises made, promises kept. That's big to the electorate. If you're going to get trusted with power, you better make the most of it.
Right. So, Kevin, you should probably take this because we have one view of the bill and another view of the bill. Is that part of what is going to determine the 26 midterms, is who wins the messaging bill over whether or not it's a big, ugly bill or a big, beautiful bill?
Well, and some of this comes down to the timeline for all of this, right? I mean, you have some of the immediate effects being on the tax front that are going to come in the next couple months and weeks. And so that's something that the Republicans can say, this is great. But the Medicaid cuts and all of the potential changes that are going to happen there are going to be closer to the midterms, if not after the midterms election. So the Democrats can say this is terrible, this is horrible, all these things are happening. But there's the question of, can they connect the dots between what is happening and this big, beautiful bill if there's so much of a waiting period?
And so we have a new wrinkle that could impact the 26 midterms and beyond. And Kevin, you've covered a lot of redistricting fights in New York. It seems like there's perpetually one. But there's a new one brewing in Texas where Greg Abbott, the governor there, is talking about doing mid-decade redistricting reform. That could gain maybe as many as 5 seats. That led to California Governor Gavin Newsom saying, well, if you're going to do that in your red state, we'll do it in our blue state. Could this be a new era of we're just constantly, perpetually dealing with redistricting and therefore creating more hardcore partisan seats and fewer battlegrounds?
So, I mean, Congressman Jeffries was asked about this today, and he knows that experiences this personally. I mean, he sees New York as being part of the reason that he did not become Speaker of the House within the last 4 years. And so as you look at this today, he basically said all options are on the table as to what the future holds. It seems Democrats at this point are basically saying we're not going to just fold and fall over. If Republicans, in their view, are basically abusing the system, we're going to do it too. And when the margins come down to just a handful of seats, California, Texas kind of exchanging some could be a wash, depending on how they actually go about doing all of this. There are a lot of legal issues in California, too.
Donna, have Democrats missed the mark here while Republicans have done kind of dramatic redistricting in other places? Should they have been more aggressive in past redistricting cycles?
Well, I think one of the challenges that Democrats had in California is that it's left to the commission that was established to handle redistricting. It's a really different situation, and I think to go back to the drawing board in California is going to require a little bit more maneuvering than what's happening in Texas. Look, I don't like monkeying with the system. I think it's a bad idea. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come back to haunt you, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. And so we'll see how voters feel about these kind of wholesale changes in the middle of a cycle. It could play very badly.
And Zach, I mean, isn't there any concern that the more of these hardcore right and left districts that we create, the more difficult it's going to be to get anything done in Washington?
Well, gerrymandering has been around for a long time.
That doesn't mean it's good.
This is an escalation. Well, the point I would simply make is, you know, we're talking about Texas, but broader. This is always done, and the escalation is always done. And I'd like to remove the mask of that there's some moral high ground on it. With all due respect, Maryland, a heavy gerrymander. New York, I mean, excuse me to the minority leader, but it's gerrymandered. He didn't get enough. So I would just step back a little bit. If you look at California, where Trump ended up close to 40%, and where the former vice president ended up close to 60%, Republicans should have 10 more seats if you're going to go from a fair perspective, right? And so I just think it's the natural escalation of where we are, and the result will probably be more red seats.
But are we
more
going
blue seats?
Are we doing this every 5 years, every 2 years, every 10 years? Like, how often is this cycle just going to repeat itself?
Well, I think what we've seen on it is simply that you have to play the game as it is in front of you.
No, this is not a game. This is actually really bad news for democracy. And I think people who believe in little d democracy think this is a really bad idea. And I don't think voters at the end of the day are going to be really happy with either Democrats or Republicans continuing to monkey with these maps.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that it's been happening perhaps quietly with certain people claiming moral high ground. The reality is that both parties do it. And so let's step back. If we actually wanted reform, then it would have to be fair and balanced across the board.
Okay, we can't go without talking about Zoran Mandami because Kevin's at the table and he covers New York politics pretty closely. He was in Washington this week. He met with some prominent Democrats. How did that go?
So the long and short is he met with a lot of Democrats that happened to largely be of the more left-leaning persuasions, shall we say, that already kind of liked him. He came out of that meeting, at least lawmakers came out of that meeting, saying they're impressed, that they like him. But at the same time, there are still these reservations, particularly when it comes to some of these more moderate district Democrats, particularly on Long Island and the Hudson Valley, who have basically said, this is not the guy that should be defining who we are. I asked Jeffries today if he's concerned, because Republicans certainly believe this could be an albatross that they can kind of weigh around the Democrats' neck, having Zoran Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, as kind of the standard bearer for New York City. And he kind of sidestepped the question.
Yeah, okay. A little bit of time for both of you here. Zach, is this a problem for Democrats outside of New York City?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly what Kevin said there. I mean, it's this moment is Democrats are in the wilderness, all right? And they're learning all the wrong lessons from 24. And Mamdani as president or as mayor, that's a bad news bears.
Right. And Donna, you get the last word. Is it time for Democratic leaders to endorse him, though, or how do they handle it?
I think it is. I mean, he won the Democratic primary. Democrats need to endorse him, and Democrats need to take a lesson from him about how to run a campaign that really touches people.
The meeting's happening tomorrow.
The meeting is happening tomorrow.
Allegedly.
So wait and see. We'll report it out here. You guys are so great at time cues. You should be here. You should come to every single one of my panels. Thank you so much. Kevin, Donna, and Zach, we appreciate it.